When the turkey that you know will fold, you may be stranded out in the cold. Still you wouldn't change it for a sack of gold. You go on with the show.
So to recap the last chapter, where I met Eglise Guitierrez, finally, in Guadalajara, had an epiphany on the streets of Mexico City, upset about the 43 Ayotzinapa students that were slaughtered, and decided I was going to do something, create an opera about it, the tragedy. Crazy. So where to start?
Raging river, raging hearts. Where does it start?
Great bosses that I had. Michael O'Brien, as a stockbroker. And what he taught me, amongst other things, was that if you want to accomplish anything, you need to assemble a successful board of directors. To get advice from the very best people you can about whatever project that you want to tackle, whatever business. So I applied that to creating an opera. And my first stop, I asked Eglise, of course, she would be an advisor. My first stop was with Jim Wright. I think maybe the most successful one we've ever had, maybe at least in my lifetime. Because last year, I think they made $200,000 profit. Very inspiring, made a marvelous company for opera. So I started with him, and we went for lunch at the Italian place at the Italian Community Center. There's a great little restaurant in there. And it was a marvelous lunch, and I kind of told him what I was thinking of doing, and if he thought I was completely mad. And he just said, no, go for it. And I said, well, will you be an advisor? He says, yeah, as long as there's no strings attached. And I said, no, I'm not. You got to start with somewhere. And then I went to Judith Svalander Ballet and asked her for help. I had no idea where I was going to go with this, but I was going to put together a team and we'll figure it out. The most inspired parts of this process was that no matter who I turned to, when they knew that I was quite sincere and why I was doing it, not one of them said, no, don't do it. It's listed all the problems and all the things that could go wrong. All of them said, yeah, we'll help, I'll give you guidance. You know, it's marvelous. You know, most businesses, you went to a bunch of donut shops and said, I want to open a donut store in your neighborhood. They'd tell you all the reasons why not to do it, but not in the artist community. Everybody inspires each other. It's really quite phenomenal and quite beautiful.
Hermoso huipil llevabas, llorona, que la Virgen te creí.
So I put together a fairly impressive team of advisors, all quite willing to help and give me some guidance. And then I found, I thought I could work with somebody that claimed to be able to write a libretto. So I focused on the story because I was quite connected with Katrina and with Ayotzinapa and the whole violence against children and the racist structure of Mexican society. And I spent every day for about 4 months walking the river and just trying to listen to the stories, listen to the wind. And I really came up with an incredible story, the true story of Katrina. The real woman emerged, not a mythological character. You know, she was once a character. She came out during the revolution, the first stories about her. And she actually, I believe, came to me and gave me the story of her life. So, yeah, I'm nuts, but you know, you gotta be nuts to be an artist. So where do we go from here?
Where am I? Yes, life can be wonderful if you're not afraid of it. All it needs is courage, imagination, and a little dough.
If you want to produce something in the theater, you need to have financial independence. Either a backer or marry somebody with money like Ruth Page did, come into it with a lot of money like Agnes de Milne, or Kirkstein was the backer of Balanchine. Diaghilev had lots of moneyed people in Paris and Europe that supported him. You can't do this if you need to make an income. I was in that unique position in which I could do it, have some money for funding, and not have to make an income. From here. So I assumed in the beginning, I didn't know that I could write. I didn't know I was a writer. So after a frustrating trip to Mexico City to work with this so-called librettist that didn't have anything clue to, wasn't listening to a word that I said, I realized that I had to do it myself. So I started writing songs. I thought, well, I'll just write songs. So I went to the river every day. And this took about, I'd say at least 6 months of writing 2 or 3 songs a day. Just writing like poems. Songs are poems. I've got booklets, like 6 tablets full of stuff that I've written. None of it usable now. I didn't realize what the process was. I was learning how to write and become a songwriter. So I put together the libretto, and I thought, well, now I've got a story, I've got the libretto, I've found a translator, had it all translated into Spanish. A wonderful chap in Guadalajara, not the one that I have now. That's another story. My composer didn't like this one. He just didn't like him, didn't like his use of language. So anyway, I had to find a composer. So the biggest thing, if you're gonna create an opera, is you need a composer. So I think altogether I spent at least 1 year on researching composers, stories, digging up the history of Katrina. The whole thing was at least a year. Composer. So I started listening to all the Mexican composers that I could find, living, contemporary Mexican composers. And I came down to 2. Juan Pablo Contreras out of Guadalajara, and Eduardo Angulo.